Listen to me closely. When the power grid goes down, your refrigerator stops being a preservation device. In 48 hours, it becomes a box of waste, a graveyard for your fresh produce, for your meat, for your family's security. We are living in a mirage. We rely on a food system that requires constant electricity, constant refrigeration, constant transport. The supermarkets you see, they are not warehouses. They are empty shelves filled by a just-in-time delivery system. But what do you eat on day 30? What do you eat when the supply chain snaps, when the supermarket shelves are bare, and the 18-wheelers stop rolling? At that moment, money becomes meaningless. You need a food source that is invincible. I'm talking about a survival technology that does not require electricity. It does not require chemicals. It does not require a freezer. And most importantly, it does not require anyone's permission. There is a tuber that can be dried and stored indefinitely. You can toss it in a sack, throw it in the corner of a dark room where rats and mold cannot attack, and it requires no preservation method other than air. Once dried, it keeps for years, maybe even decades. The agricultural departments, they call it a weed. They sell you herbicides specifically engineered to eliminate it. They publish technical bulletins calling it a menace. They have created an entire multi-million-dollar industry just to remove it off the face of the earth. But the ancient pharaohs, they had a different view. They demanded this food for their journey into the afterlife. They knew something that our arrogant modern civilization has forgotten. They knew this was the ultimate insurance policy against famine, drought, and the fall of dynasties. Welcome to Ancient Crops Archive. Today, I am going to show you the ultimate crisis tuber that the industrial food system wants you to forget. Why do I call a plant technology? Because it functions better than anything man has invented in the last century. This is Chufa, also known as tiger nut or yellow nutsedge. Look at its design. In its fresh state, it is crisp and sweet, but in its dried state, it transforms. It becomes a rock, impenetrable. Its outer shell becomes a shield of armor. Insects cannot eat through it. Bacteria cannot decompose it. It creates its own suspended animation, locking the nutrients inside a secure biological underground bunker. But here is the magic of natural engineering. When you are in need, when the harvest fails, or when the world outside is in instability, you simply take these hard, dry stones and soak them in water for a few hours. Just water, no heat, no pressure. They drink the water and swell back to their full size. They become fresh again, ready to eat, or ready to plant back into the soil to start a new cycle of life. That storage capacity meant ancient peoples could harvest Chufa in November, dry it through the freezing winter, and have absolute food security through prolonged droughts, terrible famines, and major conflicts. It is the rations of the past and the lifeline of the future. You think I am exaggerating. You think this is just a prepper's fantasy. Let's look at the hard data, the intel excavated from the ground. At Wadi Kubania, north of Aswan, archaeologists found wild roots of this plant. They are not a few hundred years old. They date back to 16,000 BCE. 16,000 years. Let that number sink in. That is 8,000 years before agriculture as we know it even existed. This proves that humans were gathering, processing, and surviving on this food during the last ice age. Long before we had tractors, long before we had grocery stores, and long before we had food corporations, this plant was keeping our species alive through the harshest conditions on Earth. By 5000 BCE, this weed had become one of the most ancient cultivated foods in Egypt. It ranked only behind emmer wheat and barley. It wasn't a side dish. It was the nutritional foundation of an entire glittering civilization. The evidence lies right in the tombs. Inside burial chambers dating back 6,000 years, archaeologists found dried tubers carefully placed in pottery jars sitting alongside the deceased. Forensic studies of mummies found these same tubers inside their digestive tracts. The departed had eaten them as their final meal before closing their eyes. The living placed them in tombs to ensure the soul would not go hungry in its eternal journey. If it was good enough, durable enough to sustain a soul for eternity, don't you think it's good enough to sustain you and your family through a power outage or a global food crisis? So the question is, if this plant is a miracle of survival, why is it discouraged to grow in some places? Why is it not sold in every supermarket? Why have they launched a campaign on it? Let's look at the battlefield. Let's look at the motive. Modern industrial agriculture is designed around dependency. They demand crops that are weak. Yes, weak and dependent. Look at wheat and corn, the two pillars of the world's food supply. They require perfect weather conditions. They demand constant chemical inputs to manage pests. They require irrigation infrastructure and massive harvesting machinery. And for all that effort and cost, wheat averages about 3 tons per acre. Now look at Chufa. It grows in marshes. It grows in dry, sandy soil. It grows where wheat would fail and wither. It requires no artificial fertilizer, no synthetic pesticides, no expensive machinery. And the yield in the Valencia region of Spain, yields range from 3 to 6 tons per acre, double the food, with zero input cost. This is why the system hates it. You cannot sell fertilizer for a crop that grows vigorously in poor soil. You cannot sell genetically modified seeds every year to farmers because they can save their own seeds from the previous harvest. You cannot sell expensive equipment for a harvest traditionally done by hand. The United States Department of Agriculture published Technical Bulletin number 1642 specifically about yellow nutsedge. They called it a serious menace in the Corn Belt. They classified it as one of the world's worst weeds. Why be so afraid of a plant? Because Chufa fights back. It is a guerrilla warrior in the plant world. One mother plant can produce 75 daughter tubers through an underground root system. But here is the resurrection trait that drives chemical companies crazy. These tubers regenerate even after the mother plant has been removed, burned, or plowed. Each tuber can lie dormant, surviving in the soil for years, waiting for the right moment to rise. They created an entire arsenal of chemicals to stop it. Glyphosate, halosulfuron, sulfentrazone, names that sound like industrial agents. Scientific research papers have to admit that single applications often fail miserably. They recommend sequential treatments, spraying year after year just to achieve 90% control. They are spending millions to suppress an abundant food source simply because they cannot control it. For a prepper, that uncontrollable wild nature is exactly what you want. You want a crop that refuses to quit. You want a food source that is loyal to your survival, not loyal to corporate profits. In a survival scenario, when society falters, you don't need salad or fancy garnishes. You need fuel. You need calories that burn slow and help you move, fight, and rebuild. Don't let its small, bean-like size fool you. This tuber is a compressed nutritional bunker. Let's break down the lab report to see its power clearly. Number 1, protein. Chufa contains up to 10% protein comparable to many intensively farmed grains. But here is the critical difference. Unlike most plant proteins, which are deficient, Chufa contains all essential amino acids. That is a complete protein. In the wild, where meat and fish are scarce, that is liquid gold that keeps your body from muscle weakness and exhaustion. Number 2, the fat. The fat content is high, mostly healthy, unsaturated fats like oleic acid. It is the exact same type of fat found in high-quality olive oil. This is dense energy keeping you warm in the winter and providing stamina for long days of labor. Researchers have even proposed Chufa as a biodiesel crop because the oil yield is so high. Imagine growing fuel in your backyard. Number 3, the gut health. In a grid-down situation, there are no hospitals, no doctors. Gut health becomes life or death. Simple digestive instability can be fatal. Chufa has 2 times the starch content of potatoes, but it is primarily resistant starch. It acts as a natural tonic, feeding beneficial gut bacteria, and does not spike blood sugar the way regular starch does. You get sustained energy without the crash or the fatigue after eating. And it is versatile. You can grind it into flour to make survival bread. You can blend it with water to create a nutritious plant milk. You can roast it over a fire to snack on like popcorn. Or in the most urgent situation, you can eat it raw, right after digging it up from the muddy ground. It is naturally gluten-free, dairy-free, and allergen-friendly. It is the perfect survival ration, compact, dense, easy to transport, and practically indestructible. Here is the naked truth they don't want to admit. Chufa cannot be patented. It has been cultivated by humans for 6,000 years. It is the public property of humanity. They classify it as a weed because they cannot turn it into an exclusive commodity. They create herbicides to control it because its resilience reveals just how fragile and weak their agricultural system really is. Extension bulletins warn that yellow nutsedge becomes invasive. But mark my words, in the world of survival, invasive is just another word for successful. A plant that thrives, spreads, and grows without human help is exactly the model that sustainable agriculture should aim for. So what is your mission after knowing this secret? Stop seeing nature's abundance as a problem. Stop buying the bottles of treatments they sell you to remove your own food security. If you want to build a resilience garden and backup food supply for the darkest day, Chufa is your foundation. It hides in plain sight, disguised as a weed. Outsiders won't know it's food. It feeds you without asking for permission, without electricity, without gasoline. And once you establish it in your garden, you have a food source that will regenerate itself and last for generations. Don't let them erase 16,000 years of human survival history. Be a renegade. Plant the weed. Prepare for what is coming. If this briefing opened your eyes, subscribe to Ancient Crops Archive immediately. Share this intel with your network of like-minded people before it gets suppressed. The next file opens soon. We are just getting started.